Top 5 games of the weekend. This is a good one. This is a good weekend for games. There are some good games I had to leave out here, and my reasoning on number 2 is I'm interested to get into it with you guys. Number 5, Clemson at Wake. These have been the best 2 teams in the ACC the last 3 or 4 years. Wake Forest has Hartman back, their quarterback, and Clemson looks like they're improved on offense, although they have not played anybody yet. So I think this is going to be interesting to see how both these teams kind of respond to each other. And Wake had a knockdown, drag-out game last week against Liberty that I don't think they completely expected. So should be an interesting one in the ACC and jockeying for position for the ACC title game early on.
Go ahead.
I think it's an interesting game, but I don't know. I need to see a little bit more. This is not one that really tickles my fancy all that much, I got to be honest. Clemson's, they looked a little, up and down, obviously, compared to their normal standard. Wake's, a good story. I mean, the whole Sam Hartman thing at this point, but it's a little early for me to think of this as like a big game. I understand the positioning, but it's just kind of, it's there. I mean, I'm sure we'll garner some interesting thoughts on Clemson, especially out of this game, but it's just kind of there for me.
If Hartman wasn't back, would this be on the list?
No.
Hell no, man. And like even with him back, it's still like I think it's fine. It's fine. It's just not one of my games that I'm like, yes, I can't wait to see this one.
Yeah, and look, Baylor and Iowa State isn't on the list for me this week.
And I'd much rather watch that than watch this game right here.
But because we've talked about that ad nauseum, and I wanted to do something else on the list. But that one's probably in the top 5 best games, evenly matched. But we talk about it all the time.
Clemson, I know you said their offense has improved, but at times does it appear as if they struggle to score?
It appears that they don't move as fast as the other big-time
Wake
offenses.
Forest has played VMI, Vanderbilt, Liberty, but they obviously can put points up. Now, can they against Clemson?
Yeah.
If this gets into a high-scoring game,
Wake's
which probably
problem
won't.
isn't scoring.
Yeah.
I think it's
Stopping people from scoring. Okay.
Can they get in the way a little bit? Number 4, I'm very intrigued by Texas at Tech, even though I think Texas could put some distance in this thing because of their running game and their offensive weapons. Hudson Card is probably going to start at quarterback. I mean, I don't believe Ewers is going to play this early on after that injury. I'm sure he'll be there suited up and, for gamesmanship and all that stuff. But I do think this is an interesting one in Lubbock. If Texas can go into what's going to be a really hostile environment and continue to play well, this was a big game for them last year, and then the season turned. But I'm interested to see Hudson Card in this one, how he plays, if his ankle's any better, and if Tech can throw a counterpunch, probably based on a lot of emotion that's going to be in that stadium.
Yeah, this will be interesting. I think Hudson Card played really well last week. UT's playing good defense. They've got some playmakers. Texas Tech's scrappy. That's what I would describe them as right now. Their defense is solid enough. Like, again, Tyree Wilson's a great player you're going to hear tons and tons about. But their offensive line's not very good. Their quarterback's not very good. They've got some fine skill guys, but I think Tech at this point is just a lot of belief in playing really hard is really their thing. And, I think that, they'll give it a good run, but I just see Texas ultimately running away from them, over the course of this game.
Long trip to the East Coast, tough game. Again, Donovan Smith seems to give it up once or twice a game. Texas's defense is playing much better, at least it appears. And so, he's got to be careful. Now, they won't have Overshown for the first half because of the targeting call that they have.
I would love to get hyped
UTSA.
about this, but I just don't really believe that Tech's going to win this game. And I just think Texas is going to go in there and take care of business, and that'll be probably, with Hudson Card. But, that's just kind of where I am on that.
Yeah. Number 3, USC at Oregon State. This is a trap game potentially for USC. Shouldn't be a trap game. They should know. Oregon State's really good. Jonathan Smith's got that team on the upswing, but USC hasn't done much wrong yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when they go on the road to Corvallis, a team that thumped them really good last year, maybe the last 2 years, but really thumped them. So, I think
everything for USC has been kind of easy, right?
Yeah.
And if they have adversity, they face adversity, a road game, maybe they just go blow their doors off early. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's a test. It's a one that they probably want as well.
Yeah, I looked at Wikipedia. They got that Oregon State won last year, and they hadn't won before then since 2010. So it's been a while since they would have won back-to-backs, but I think they won like 3 out of 5 back in the early 2005 to 2010 period. USC's looked really good, as you'd expect them to under Lincoln Riley, especially offensively. I think their defense still has to be challenged a bit more, and I think in general they need to be challenged a bit more, but they'll get challenged this weekend. That ought to be a hot crowd. Oregon State's very good. They're, got a lot of Boise tendencies when you think of the Broncos, kind of greatness when they were really at the top of their game, kind of get some of those same flavors with Oregon State and what they're doing. So, that ought to be fun. I think Trojans eventually just have too much firepower, but this will be a test for them.
Yeah. We got a $20 super chat, by the way.
I was going to read that. I got it here in front of me.
Yeah.
Big 12 Sports and Smack, a friendship group, $20. Just wanted to say this is my favorite go-to for sports, and y'all do a masterful job of being informative, fun, and real. If I could only change one thing, I would change the title to All the Smoke and Half the Catalina.
Like that. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that.
Very well done.
Appreciate
Thank you.
the super chat. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, look, you keep spending $20. We can change the name to almost anything you want.
Yeah, you want.
So there's only one title of this show I've protested. I'm not going to say it out loud because I want that joke to die. Number 2, Arkansas versus A&M. This one is intriguing to me in the fact that A&M is somehow favored, even though they haven't really scored a lot of points. Arkansas has a much better offensive situation. Maybe it's because they didn't play well against Missouri State last week. But right now, I think our picks this week, before we tell them tomorrow, but I'll give you a preview. I think we all picked Arkansas because Arkansas's played better to this point in the season. The scare last week notwithstanding to Bobby Petrino, but even still, A&M's
defense is fantastic. Mm-hmm. We know that. But I'm not sold yet. They do get some guys back this week. Max Johnson solidified what they were doing, at least a maturity. Didn't make the big mistake. I just feel like Arkansas is playing a little bit better, maybe even a lot bit better, although you said they got scared. This would be a nice back-to-back win for A&M if they can beat Miami after what happened 2 weeks ago and then beat Arkansas. It puts them right back in a pretty good spot.
Do y'all know who's favored in this game?
A&M.
A&M is. Yeah, they are.
Yeah, A&M's favored in this game. It's hard to kind of believe just with the more knowns on the Arkansas offensive side of the football. But, maybe just playing good defense and getting Devin Achane and Anaya Smith loose a couple times is just the formula that'll keep working for A&M. But I'm very curious how Max Johnson follows up that performance that's followed up the Haynes King performances. And I'm curious where this offense goes from here because, it's Achane and Smith show. And besides that, there's really not a whole lot to grasp onto. So I would think Arkansas could, score enough to get the win here, but they seem to always fall on their face when they play A&M too, or most of the time it feels that way anyway.
Man, they had about 2 or 3 years in a row.
Until last year.
One was like A&M was at their own 2, down 6 or whatever. They hit the guys in the NFL now, the receiver that was also a kick, Kirk, for a long pass. It was nuts for about 3 or 4 years in a row.
Yeah. All right. And number 1, the first time this game has been remotely relevant in a very long time, Florida at Tennessee. The sad thing for Tennessee is that when this game was relevant, and no matter who was the quarterback at Tennessee, including one of the NFL greats, this was Florida's game for a long time. I think the series is 31-20.
During Spurrier's run?
Spurrier owned Tennessee. He absolutely, and they'd have years where they'd get all excited, like, oh, it's going to be our year, and Spurrier would just sit back and laugh like, all right, I'm going to have Danny Werfel come in there and shove it right down your throat. So all those different things, but I'm glad that this game is back to being nationally relevant again. And again, they're not great. Tennessee, I think, is a little better than Florida right now, but the teams are better, and it should be a good game as opposed to a tickle fight that it's been the last few years.
It's a huge stadium, man. That's another one of those 100,000 plus. They'll be packed with Rocky Top.
Yeah.
They will in Knoxville. I think this ought to be a great game. I would take Tennessee as well. They got a bit more firepower offensively. Anthony Richardson's just making way too many mistakes. But I mean, it's Florida, Tennessee. Who the heck knows once they get the gloves off? If it's anything like the old days, this will be an absolute war. But yeah, I would think the Vols have to be the favorites here, and a great game in the battle for who's going to basically try and contend with Georgia in the SEC East. So an important game for both teams right here.
BYU and Utah